Hello, I am the Unfeeling. I must be honest. I've been dreading this day. I've heard so many things about the next blog I'm going to cover. When people talk about radical feminism, my mind almost automatically goes to this blog. I am talking about Jezebel. I have seen some things on there in the past that really made me want to avoid it. However, I will still try to be as unbiased as possible and try to give them a chance. Now with that out of the way, the About section is actually pretty lacking. Their About section is basically just a 2-minute video of various news segments they've been featured on, as well as a couple of little interviews with women that work on the site. They explained they are a site that publishes stories that women want to hear on various topics. Thankfully, they also have a commenting guideline.
Commenting is a privilege, not a right. The following guidelines are very loose and open to our interpretation, but they should shed some light on the general perspective of the site's editors and moderators. This is probably obvious but bears repeating. This is our website, and we will moderate it as we see fit.
Okay, not exactly putting their best foot forward here. They are correct in saying commenting is a privilege, not a right, but why blatantly say their guidelines are vague and open to their interpretation? That just makes them sound like they're saying they can change the rules at any moment just because, and you should just deal with it. If you have a problem with it, tough titties. Take that shit somewhere else, which may or may not be what they're trying to convey. I understand wanting to explicitly state it's their blog, their rules, but the way they express it comes off as heavy-handed. They continue to say they enjoy smart and witty comments, and interesting ideas pertaining to the article's topic. The comment guidelines are pretty standard, except for a couple of things. The first is under some of the things for which we may take your star away, or demote your comment, or maybe even ban you.
Arguing with editors regarding censorship or the violation of free speech is just silly, and it will almost certainly have some kind of consequence.
Keep in mind, this is under a section where they explain why they may take away stars, which I'm assuming are some point system they have, demote your comments, or ban you. Again, it is their site, their rules, and commenting is a privilege. It just seems weird to me that they act like violating free speech through censorship is no big deal. By calling it silly, they're basically laughing at anyone that would get upset about their comments being demoted, deleted, or whatever. Which leads to the next thing that I noticed. There isn't a section on this page about not making racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. comments. Nothing, not a single thing. While it would be intellectually dishonest to say they support those things just from lacking a guideline against it, it is rather strange when considering all the other blogs had something like that. It just really stuck out to me. I have to admit, the title of the first article made me laugh. Here I am, looking into feminism, going over the top feminist websites according to TakePart.com. And the first article I saw was about paying more for deodorant. Once I saw it, I knew I had to discuss it. I deviated from my usual format. I usually go to the About section and then go back to the main page, clicking on the first article I saw. However, this article is the first one listed when I got on the site, and by the time I was done going over the About section and comment guidelines, it was listed as the 7th article. So instead of going over this and jumping back to the top, I'll start with this one and work my way down.
Dear Faceless Overcharged Every Woman, did you know you are still paying as much as 30 cents more per stick of deodorant than a man version for no good reason, when, if anything, a dude's deodorant needs more of the anti-pit stink stuff in it? Seems fair, huh? And don't get me started on what you're squandering on dry cleaning. It's an issue that's as old as the day is long. Women pay more money than men for certain goods and services, and it don't make no sense. Anecdotally, you realize this when you go for a smart new haircut and notice that men's haircuts cost several dollars less even if you literally only need a trim or have a pixie cut. Vox author Danielle Kurtzleben note that it's #not all products, and that some companies offer men's and women's products at the same price, though I can't tell you what those are and am having trouble finding them. But the real issue is of course why in the name of all that is holy are we putting up with this shit? It seems so clear-cut, as issues go, that it's wrong, and every time I think about it, I'm infuriated again, and then I just go back to my life and forget about it until another thing reminds me. For some weird reason, I think nothing is to be done. But that is not true, and it's also lazy. Kurt Solben explores why this is really happening with the following explanations. You don't know any better. This is probably the biggest culprit, in my opinion. You know, of course, intellectually that gender pricing is real, but when you go shopping and hit the actual pain point, you probably don't realize it. The very process of shopping for certain grooming aids is segregated by gender, so you'd have to go out of your way to even note the price of Old Spice deodorant compared to your Dove. In fact, the only comparison you're probably even making is just within a slew of all overpriced products geared to you by gender. As usual, to do something about this, you'd have to go out of your way to investigate a different section of cheaper product, and unless you're doing so on purpose, this probably won't happen.
Okay, I thought the title of this article was funny, but the contents of it is downright hilarious. Let's remember that for the most part, companies charge what people are willing to pay. So if you're paying a higher price for a similar product, it's because you were willing to pay it. You can't go back and say, wait, why did they get a better deal than I did? Their product and my product are similar. Sure, they're not the same brand or the same exact product, but they paid a lower price. No fair. Odds are, the simple answer is, they weren't willing to pay for it at the same price that you were. If you want to make a change, start buying cheaper products. Hit those companies that charge more in their bottom line. They'll spend millions of dollars to do market research to figure out the problem, and then most likely lower their prices to compete with competitors that are now outselling them. It's just a thought. But to go on a rant, which is how I view this article, and call it an injustice is just ridiculous. It's pretty funny to say, you know intellectually that gender pricing is real, as if it's a conspiracy. Yes, I'm sure the big companies have gotten together and said, we will charge more for female products since those greedy bitches want to be equal to us oppressive men. And I'm sure they called up every store that sells their products to convince them to segregate their products by gender. I'm sure they told them about their evil plans to economically hurt women, so they need to keep all of the male and female products separate to keep those dumb cunts oblivious to how they're getting fucked every time they go shopping. It wouldn't have anything to do with optimizing product placement within stores to drive up sales. Nope, no sir, it must be a good old-fashioned fuck you to women.
According to Keba Gay, a managing partner at the Press Dry Cleaning and Laundry in Washington, D.C., high-priced ladies' dry cleaning has to do with actual differences in the clothing. Men's dress shirts tend to be standard in shape and material, often cotton, with 2 long sleeves, 1 button up front, maybe a pocket or 2, and 1 machine can press all of them. Women's shirts, on the other hand, are far more varied: sleeveless, rayon, cap-sleeved, buttoned, silk, pull-over, and can't all be handled the same. The reason a woman's shirt is $5 versus $1.85 for men is because of the different types of shirt, Gay says. But he says he does make exceptions. If men wear a polyester-like Hawaiian shirt, then they'll have to pay more, too. If I owned a dry cleaning business that made bank off charging one group more than others, this is exactly what I would say too.
Keba Gay actually made a valid point. If you come into a dry cleaning business with various different types of shirts, be it their material or style, yeah, you're probably going to be charged more than if they were all just standard cotton shirts. I don't see how this is gender-based discrimination as the author, Tracy Moore, is trying to paint it as. I don't know the statistic on styles men and women wear, but if it's true that more women wear different styles of clothing with different materials than men, who probably just wear standard t-shirts with different materials, then it stands to reason that women would probably pay more for dry cleaning. To say it's gender-based discrimination, you would have to argue that women are making these choices against their will, which anyone can see is not the case, or that women's decisions are irrelevant, and they deserve to pay the same prices as men, despite their different clothing styles and materials. The former would argue that women are oppressed by the system, and have no choice in the matter. The latter would argue that women are entitled to the same thing as men, even when they don't make the same choices. So which is it, non-existent oppression, or undeserved entitlement? Either way, I would think both would be insulting to the average woman, because it says she either doesn't have control over her own life, or that she thinks so highly of herself that she believes she deserves anything she wants, simply because she wants it.
You're a woman. The real reason you are being charged more is not really any of the above stuff. Those are justifications for charging you more because you are a woman. The haircuts, dry cleaning, makeup, grooming, and general maintenance of complying with baseline femininity means more product on your body, and more services to maintain an aesthetic. Because that is more likely an everyday part of your existence than it is for dudes, your demand for these goods and services is higher and more routine, meaning you have to, for all intents and purposes, buy this shit.
Actually, no, you don't have to buy that shit. Last I checked, women don't have a madman holding a gun to their heads, telling them to buy that shit or else he swears to God Almighty that he'll blow their fucking brains out. These things are choices, and even then, the smart thing to do is to shop around for the better deals. I look for the best deals that I can, either remembering the prices, or buying in bulk. It seriously isn't that hard. Many people, men and women, use coupons and shop around for the best deals they can find on things they buy on a regular basis. What's stopping you from doing the same? In fact, I bet if you have coupons, those higher prices would magically go away on certain products and you would end up paying less than the male products, at least when the male product is still full price. My point is, don't blame the market and sexism for women's willingness to pay a higher price for similar products. Either stop buying them at full price or stop buying them altogether, by switching to cheaper brands. Matter of fact, here are alternatives to everything I just said. Start your own salon and charge equal for haircuts for men and women. Start a dry cleaner and charge the same regardless of the type of clothing that's brought in. Look online to see if you can create your own makeup. Do the same for your hair products. These things aren't exactly ancient Chinese secrets. Information like this is most likely readily available online. All you have to do is look it up and do things for yourself. If this is really that important to you, then I don't see why you couldn't simply boycott it until companies wised up.
Get pissed alert. I can't say it better than Kurt Cobain. You're paying extra to play a made-up role that society pays you less for inhabiting. You're paying extra to play a made-up role that society pays you less for inhabiting. You're paying extra to play a made-up role that society pays you less for inhabiting. You're paying extra to play a made-up role that society pays you less for inhabiting.
Miss Moore and Miss Kurt Cobain, let me take a page from Sargon of Akkad for a moment and let you in on a little secret. Now, you must understand that I am violating the secret code that every boy is taught from birth. It is strictly forbidden to tell women this, so listen up, because I can only say this once, and if I get caught, they'll kidnap me in my sleep, beat me to near death, then hang me from a ceiling by my dick like a chandelier. This is some serious shit, but it must be said, and this forbidden secret, is that just because you repeat it over and over, doesn't mean it's true. The wage gap is a myth. It's spouted as a feminist talking point to suggest that women are discriminated against, but this is an epic fail on your part. Even your own source shows that it's not discrimination, despite it trying to suggest that it's a major part of it.
Why is there a gender wage gap? Lots of factors contribute to the gap in pay between men and women. There's outright discrimination, of course, and if that's all there was, then the gender wage gap would be simple to quantify. But researchers have identified many more differences between men and women that contribute to the wage gap. For example, women tend to work fewer hours than men. Even among full-time workers, women also tend to work in lower-paying fields than men. That means that different approaches to measuring the gap come up with different numbers than the oft-used 77% figure. Other factors that are tougher to measure are also involved. Women tend not to negotiate their pay as hard as men do, and there is also evidence that employers are averse to promoting young women, as employers worry that those women will not stick around or will start putting in fewer hours when they have children. Women are also less interested than men are in becoming the boss, as a Pew study found in late 2013.
Then what is the problem exactly? Why are we calling this a wage gap? It sounds to me like we don't have a quote-unquote wage gap, but a major difference in how men and women seek employment. Women take fewer hours than men. Women tend to seek lower-paying jobs. Women don't negotiate their pay as hard as men. Women are less likely to seek management positions. I don't know the statistics on women coming back from work after maternity leave, but it should be understandable that if women leave work for a while to have and take care of a child, when they get back to work, they will be behind. Their skills won't be as sharp and their routine won't be as honed. If she worked in a fast-paced environment, it will be even worse. So yes, I can see how they would be hesitant to promote young women, who are likely to have children sooner rather than later. All the time she will be gone to take care of her child, someone else will be filling in for her, or have their responsibilities expanded to cover her absence. So why not hire or promote someone that won't be gone in the first place? My point is, being away from work hurts you. It sucks, and no one is blaming women for their biology. It's just a fact of life. Just as the saying goes, life isn't fair. It hardly ever is. Anyway, back to the article.
What are you gonna do now? Seriously, what? Kurtzel Bent says watch your wallet, at the very least. When it comes to deodorant, sunscreen, moisturizer, and razors, check ingredients and buy the cheaper dude version. Find, and patronize, hair salons that charge one price for everyone. I like a more confrontational approach. Ask for the cheaper rate at your salon if you feel your haircut merits less work, or ask for an explanation of the pricing. If more people do this, more retailers and businesses will re-examine their approach. And never underestimate the beauty of complaining, online, on social media, to retailers, to brands, to marketing companies, to your representative, to anyone who will listen. Investigate pricing at your local drugstore, as Bustle did recently. Post the results online and alert the brands that you're aware of this scam. Make them have to answer for it. Sure, it's one more job you won't be paid for, but hey, that's just playing out our gender right, and that makes us happy, remember?
At least they did propose some solution, but yeah, I'd love to see her confrontational approach play out. I don't see that working that way she thinks it will. I would predict they'll be told, don't like it, go somewhere else. The number of people that take her approach would have to be so overwhelming that businesses couldn't ignore it. Frankly, after talking to female friends about this, they feel like this is such a petty complaint that it's not even worth their time. They don't care, they really don't. Seriously, Jezebel could be spending their time focusing on more important issues than paying a few cents more on similar products, which aren't the same exact product and probably not even the same brand. So outside of the salon and dry cleaner examples, they're basically asking for different companies, be it the maker of the product or the retail stores, to agree to keep their products at the same price as the other companies, which is price fixing, which is illegal. Because either they'll have to evaluate each product on their own and create tiers, so that each product of a certain quality is priced the same as others on the same tier, or all products that are similar to each other, such as all brands of deodorant, will have to be the same price. Again, pretty sure that's price fixing, and it's illegal on the federal level. Luckily, the comments were mostly about shopping around and even sharing deodorant with their boyfriends or husbands. The next article was about Conan O'Brien breaking the news of Robin Williams' death to his audience. It's tragic, but ultimately not what I'm here for, so I'm simply going to skip it. The next article is, Childbearing Women Terrify Male Bosses Because Babies Make Them Dumb. Well, that's some clickbait if I ever saw it.
If you're in the UK and are hiding your pregnancy to get a new job, you've got the right idea. A new survey says that 1/3 of managers would employ a man in his 20s or 30s over a woman the same age for fear they will take maternity leave. OMG babies, they ruin everything, don't they? The Guardian references a new study by a law firm called Slater and Gordon which polled 500 managers and found that not only are 20s and 30s women a shaky bet, but so are mothers. A fourth of the surveyed managers said they'd hire a man to circumvent maternity leave and child care issues because all that kid stuff is expensive. Also, the women return from maternity leave dumber, according to these managers. Employment Relations Minister Joe Swinson said, "Pregnancy discrimination is illegal, immoral and completely unacceptable. There is no excuse for such attitudes from these employers, who frankly are dinosaurs. British business simply can't afford to lose out on half of the available talent pool."
Wow, there's a lot of things I need to address in these 3 paragraphs. First, it's not that children ruin everything, it's that women must take time off, which more and more companies are being forced to pay for, to have children. While they're still paying her, they must hire someone else to cover for her absence. They're basically paying for 2 employees, only to have one show up for work. There should be no surprise to see that a significant number of managers are more willing to hire men in their 20s and 30s. As we went over earlier in this video, men tend to work longer hours and are more interested in becoming managers. That means they're statistically more likely to get a worker that will be more productive, have more initiative, and someone that is looking for a leadership position. In other words, a more dedicated worker to their company. Also, the quote that women return from maternity leave dumber, according to these managers, had me puzzled. Surely, no one is that stupid to make such a comment. So I clicked on the Guardian article it was referencing, and wouldn't you know it, they were greatly exaggerating. This is what the Guardian article actually said.
A third of managers would rather employ a man in his 20s or 30s over a woman of the same age for fear of maternity leave. According to a new study, a survey of 500 managers by law firm Slater & Gordon showed that more than 40% admitted they are generally wary of hiring a woman of childbearing age, while a similar number would be wary of hiring a woman who has already had a child or hiring a mother for a senior role. A quarter said they would rather hire a man to get around issues of maternity leave and child care when a woman does return to work, with 44% saying the financial costs to their business because of maternity leave are a significant concern. The study also showed that a third of managers claim that women are not as good at their jobs when they come back from maternity leave.
What a great way to misrepresent people that disagree with you, Jezebel. The people in the comments on the Jezebel article are mainly talking about how they're entitled to not only maternity leave, but have it be a stable living wage. This is why a third of managers are hesitant to hire women that are of childbearing age. What these women fail to realize is that the company hired them to do a job. If they get on maternity leave, the company has lost a worker, but it's still expected to pay for her absence, which hurts the business. It's an extra cost because she feels entitled for the business to pay her to do nothing at home. I'm not trying to trivialize pregnancy, but my point is, if you're at home, preparing to have a child, you are contributing nothing to the business. Thus, you are getting paid to do nothing. These women basically want their cake and eat it too. That is, not have to work, but still get paid. A lot of this could be avoided if people were more responsible with their money instead of having others pay for their way. Women, don't have kids until you are financially stable. Save up your money so you can live off of it for a few months. In other words, instead of having your employer pay you to contribute nothing, because you feel entitled to their money, which isn't infinite by the way, realize your decisions have consequences, and take actions into your own hands. Anyone that has a child they can't afford is irresponsible. If you can't afford to stop working to take care of a child, then you probably aren't financially stable enough to have that child. Don't expect your employer to pay for your things. They're your things. You pay for them. There is a comment that was left on the Guardian's article that sums it up nicely, especially at the end. I used to manage a local transport operation and I needed drivers available from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. These hours have a child care problem. I had several instances where schools called to say a child was sick. When I told them it would take an hour to schedule the mother off the road, they would tell me that was unacceptable, just like they were running the business. Workers, schools etc. need to understand that jobs disappear if there is a lack of reliable staff. Employers' pockets are not bottomless. These rules increase overhead and hence the cost of the service. You have to earn your pay. I remember a school teacher of mine saying, "If you get something for nothing, someone has worked for nothing." Everyone please remember this. I never forgot it. Now I can't get into the legal matter because I'm ignorant on the subject. If it's truly illegal for them to hire men over women for that reason, it's horrible that they're doing it. That is, if they're doing it at all. Go back and look. It never said they were actually doing it, just that they would prefer to hire a man. The law is the law, but that doesn't mean the law is just. So let me make this clear. I'm not saying they should break the law, but I am saying the law is unjust as it forces businesses to act against their best interest because a special interest group, in this case women, want benefits that only they get because of their unique biology. Sometimes, discrimination isn't based on hate, but on smart and logical planning. This is one of those moral gray areas that I can see validity on both sides of the issue, and in my opinion, there is a middle ground that most likely businesses wouldn't mind. and these women would hate. The way I see it, it should be illegal to not hire a woman just because she may have a child and be out of work. However, it should be perfectly legal to tell her that because she is out of work, they won't pay for her absence, since she is literally contributing nothing to the business, nor should she expect to have her job back once she's ready to get back to the workforce. I would bet this would eliminate the vast majority of hiring discrimination. If and when it happens, women would be on the same par as men, as in, they're expected to earn their pay and don't get paid to do nothing. I think I'm going to leave it there. The next 2 articles were just about a teen that took a selfie every day for 7 years and ABC's aerial coverage of Robin Williams' home as they reported on his death. There wasn't anything wrong or misleading I could see with them, so I didn't want to take it further. Jezebel seems to be a decent site when it comes to coverage of someone's death or someone doing something unimportant like taking pictures of themselves. However, when it comes to social issues, their bias is obviously blinding them as they use slander and misinformation to prove their points. Also, I was going to go over Broadsheet next week, but it seems like it had been moved to another website and hasn't been updated for a year. Others on the list also seem to have been discontinued. Finally, Feminism 101 seems somewhat active, but it mainly has open threads now with very little activity. It's practically dead too. I mean, like 4 comments on an open thread dead. So I'm just going to skip them, which means the next video will be on Bitch Magazine's blog.